This video is brought to you by Miniature Market. Thousands of board games, discounted prices, miniaturemarket.com.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we're going to the Wild West. We're going to be getting covered wagons and putting different items in there, recruiting Townsfolk. We're essentially going to be on the Oregon Trail. Today we're taking a look at Pioneer Days from Tasty Minstrel Games. It's 2 to 4 players, takes 45 to 60 minutes to play. So let me show you what this is all about and I'll see you on the other side. At the beginning of the game, you get to pick one of these standard pioneers that has different artwork, but everyone has the same starting resources and same special ability. Let's look at some of the other characters. However, you can flip those over for an advanced game. Each of them has a name, different starting resources, and a different special ability. Let's say I select Jake the Prospector. So here I'd be starting with a large wagon, which is this, a gold, some wood, and some money. Now here's the main board with some different disaster tracks, different townsfolk you can hire, different actions. There's a scoring board over here, and at the top there's different types of town cards you'll be going through. Now the game's played over 4 weeks. At the end of each week, if you're able to provide, let's say in this case, 2 wood, you'll get 2 favor. And if you are able to provide a gold token, you get 1 favor and 3 silver to spend as coins. And each week, at the end of this, these will change. And during a week, there's multiple days that you'll be essentially taking a turn and drafting dice. Now the start player will take this cool little horseshoe for the start player marker. They'll take dice out equal to the number of players plus 1. So in a 2-player game, you take 3 dice. There's also a certain amount of dice of each color in this bag depending on the amount of players. And then the first player will take one of these dice. Now each of these dice has a color and they have a specific logo that will be an action. So when you take a die, you can do one of 3 things with it. You can use that die for money. So if I had selected this yellow die of medicine, I would look for the medicine, which is right here. I would get 6 silver, which is the most you can get. If I had used this die for money, I'd only get $1. So one of the things you could do is use money. The other thing you can do is use this die to recruit the townsfolk that's below it. So I could have used this to get Professor Claire, I could have used this to get the carpenter, and I could have used this, going to equipment, to get the medicine man. Now each of these town folks, some of them give you an immediate ability like, hey, gain 1 favor. Favor is essentially 2 points that you'll get. This is a way that you get points over the course of the game. And all of them also have a thing at the end of the game. If this townsfolk's with me at the end of the game, I'll get 1 point per townsfolk that I have. Or 1 point per cattle or per equipment. So end game goals and sometimes immediate abilities and sometimes persistent abilities. Once these are taken, that player has them. And these don't get refilled until the end of the week, which essentially is once the draw bag's empty of dice. And once you use the dice, you place it in the used dice under the color there. And let's say the other player uses this black die for either money, the equipment, or the townsfolk. And this always leaves 1. There'll always be 1 die left over at the end of each round. In this case, it's a green one, which means this green disc is going to move 1 to the right. If this disc ever gets to the 3rd spot, a disaster happens, any of these. In this case, it's a disease and you must pay 1 medicine for each townfolk, or those that you cannot pay for are discarded. So you can see these disasters getting ready to happen and you have to plan for them by, in this case, trying to get medicine if you have some townsfolk that you want to help. Some of the other ones are, hey, famine, you have to pay 1 silver for each cattle. Those that you cannot pay for are discarded. A raid, you must lose half of your silver, rounded up. Or storms, you must pay 1 wood for each wagon, and you got to place a damage token on each one that you cannot pay for. And you definitely don't want to have your wagons damaged because it basically gives you -2 points and it stops you from placing things in it. This is a large wagon. I can hold gold. Each spot can hold 2 wood and each spot can actually hold 2 medicine. Why do you need those things? Well, the medicine obviously to keep the townsfolk happy. Wood, we'll show you about that later. So this die would have made the disaster go, and then this would get past the next player. The next player would take the number of dice plus 1, and we'd keep going until this dice bag's empty. Once that's done, it's the end of the week. By the way, speaking of disasters, if the last die that's left is the black die, then all of the discs would move 1, so it's really bad to do that. Talked about using dice for money and for townsfolk. What about for the actions? Well, if you use the medicine die, you'll get 1 medicine, which again keeps your townsfolk healthy during the disease. Wood keeps your when storms come, it keeps your wagons from being damaged, and you can use some of these resources to gain favors at the end of the week. The cattle also can be sometimes used for some of these favors, some of these town cars, but they also sometimes here, like you have to pay 1 silver for each cattle that you can. Plus, cattle do things at the end of the game. If you use this for equipment, you can pull one of these equipment tiles. Now these tiles do different things depending on what they are, and those are all on your board. And when an item is in your wagon, they'll allow you to do different things depending on it. Like this one says it's +1 gold. Now, so what this has is a medicine on it. So anytime I activate a die that has a medicine on it, I can activate this equipment, which in this case would get me 1 gold token. Some of the other ones get you cattle and medicine and wood and all different things depending on the type of equipment. Now this action allows you to get gold. You take this gold bag and you would take a gold out of it. You look at it secretly and place it on your board. These have either 1 or 2 or 3 nuggets. You put it face down on an empty spot in your wagon. And this is a wild, which allows you to use this as any of the other actions. Now you might be thinking, well, this is pretty random. I might get stuck with stuff I don't want. Not really, because when it's your turn, you can spend 3 silver to turn this to anything. So let's say I didn't want the black to be last. I'll take this, and I really need some medicine. I'll spend 3 silver, and I'll use this for the medicine action. So you do have ways to mitigate the dice, and that's very important in this game. However, when you do mitigate dice, you don't get to trigger the ones in your equipment list from that, but you do get to take the action. And also during your turn, you can buy wagons. It's small as $5, large as $8, and you can buy as many as you can afford. Once all the dice are gone and you finish that day, then essentially the week is over. Everyone will get 1 point for each cattle they have. Some people's town folks will do things at the end of the week. And at that time, players can turn in resources to gain favors. And at the end of the week, all the new equipment would come out. These would be discarded. All of these would be discarded. New ones would come out. By the way, there's 5 different sets of these. They're labeled A, B, C, or D, or E. And you basically decide to use 2 different sets, and you'll use those sets, shuffle them up, and you'll have the right amount for the whole game. So there's quite a bit of replayability with a lot of these cards. And of course, these are different every game too, and they come up in different ways. And once you go through enough weeks, because there's a specific number of these put out at the beginning of the game, and on the last week, actually, there'll be 2 new ones here, and there'll actually be a 3rd one on top of it. So there's actually 3 goals you'll be able to do in the last round. And so that's pretty much how the game works. You're doing actions to try to get points here, different points on the way that you use your Townsfolk, and many different other ways to score. Now once the game's gone through the last week, everyone will get points, 1 point for each of the gold nuggets that they have. You'll get 2 points for each of the favors you have. You'll get victory points depending on certain things on your townsfolks, and you'll lose 2 points for each of these damaged wagons. Whoever has the most is the winner, and if there's a tie, whoever has the most silver is the winner. If there's still a tie, you share the victory. But it's also important to note that at the end of the game, all of the tracks move up 1, which can really change the way that the game ends up scoring. And this is the scoreboard you'll use sometimes throughout the game and at the end, and these are the different player colors that you'll use during the game. All right, well, there's Pioneer Days. So let's start at the beginning of art and theme. Now, I tend to like the Western style games, and this one's no different. I thought it was really cool, the theme of this. You're trying to, get all the equipment, trying to get gold, recruit townsfolk, trying to stay away from certain disasters, or at least, get yourself prepped for them. I thought the art was cool, the way the characters were drawn, everything, the presentation of this game I really enjoyed quite a bit. It did make me feel like I was in the Old West. Now this game revolves around dice drafting, which I love drafting in games. I even love maybe even more dice drafting. Card drafting is great too, but dice drafting is awesome. And I like this a lot. I like that each of the dice was a certain color, and each of those colors of the dice had different actions on them. So there were a couple of things to think about: the color and the actions, and also what you had in there from your different equipment. More on that in just a minute. But when you're drafting, it's like not only what are you thinking of taking now, but also what are you leaving? And the decision of what to leave both your opponents and for a possible disaster is huge. And this is where it comes to for the preparing for the disasters, because as people are leaving that last die, that's the disaster that's going to happen. And if it's a black die, then all the disasters are moving 1. And so it's really interesting choices to make there as to what's going on. Now you clearly can see how the disasters are moving down the track, and you're like looking at those and you're going, okay, should I really be paying attention to that? Is that disaster really going to hurt me right now? yes, I better prepare for it. So you're looking, you're planning a few turns ahead. You're like, well, I better get one of those things. I better get another cow because I'm gonna have to put one of those in when this disaster strikes, or this is gonna kill one of my town folks. I need to start stocking up on medicine. Or maybe I get one of the town folk that says, hey, when you roll this die, you get an extra medicine, stuff like that. So there's different cards and combos and things that you can use to prepare for these disasters. And it's a big part of the puzzle in this game, because if you do get hit by the disaster and it's really gonna hurt you, it does really hurt you hard. So you've got to really figure that out. But usually I'm not huge about games just taking you out like this. But you have plenty of warning, you see it happening, and the players are influencing when this happens, and there's many ways to mitigate that. It's just whether you want to decide to mitigate it or not, that's for you. And I like how some of the disasters will really hurt you at some times, and maybe some others not really that much. And then that changes depending on what's going on in the game and what you have. I love building the engine of your townsfolk. And by the way, all those different townsfolk, there's different decks that you can use. You can switch the decks up each game. So there's a lot of replayability there too. But I like how a lot of the townsfolk you can use for sometimes immediate abilities, but you can also, combo those together. The last game that I played of this, I had a card that said, 1 point for every townsfolk you have, or a certain amount of points for every townsfolk you had. Well, I ended up getting a lot of townsfolk, and a lot of them actually said that on there. So I got to get a ton of points. I was losing by a ton because I was banking on these end game points. I ended up losing by only 2 points. I was down by more than 20 at the end of the game. And I came all the way back and almost won because I had a ton of end game points. And I like that, how you can go after points now, or you can try to set up an engine to help you get things, but also an engine for scoring at the end of the game. And I thought that was cool too. I liked how you can combo things where you roll the die and you can take, if you have equipment that has that on there, where you can take that action. I thought that was really cool. I also like that, with the dice, you're either taking it for one of three things. You're either taking it for money, or you're taking it to get the townsfolk, you're taking it to do an action. I liked how there was multiple things. I liked that you could pay money to change the die. I thought that was cool too. Lots of ways to mitigate dice. So if you're one of those players that are like Euro players that are like, well, I don't want to do the dice drafting because you roll the dice and that's too random. No, because there's still great decisions to make, and you can manipulate the dice with the money. So that takes that argument right out, and I think that's really good. And I also like the town card games that come out differently at different times, and there's different goals each round, and you got to, again, decide whether you're going to go for that, because those are usually worth a good amount of those victory point chits. And so lots of things to think about. So cons, are there anything I didn't like about the game? Two really nitpicks, nothing really big here that I didn't like. Number one, the score track was hard to read and use. It kind of went in a snake form, and they only had the numbers every 5, and then sometimes it was hard to see where it went. So the score track was a little hard to use. Also, the wagons didn't quite fit on there just right. Also, the color of the wagons. I realized they made them all sort of bland brownish colors because they didn't want to make them the colors of the dice, which would be totally confusing, so I'm glad they did that. But it was really hard to remember. They're not usual colors. It's like tan number 1 and beige number 2, basically. And it's hard to figure out who was moving what throughout the game. I really wish they would have given another wagon, even if smaller, or even just a round token with the same color of the wagon in front of people, so it'd be easier to score, because it's so hard to remember which beigeish color somebody is. So 2 knocks there, but they're nitpicks because the game itself is good. So overall, I enjoyed the game. It's designed well. I don't see any flaws in the design. I like the mitigation of the dice. I like the choices to make, long term versus short term versus preparing. Overall, it was a good game. I enjoyed it. Is it one of the games I'm going to be saying is one of the best games of the year? Am I going to be rushing this game to the game group, telling everybody, you got to play this, this is the best? No, I don't think so. And that's the problem with today's day in board games. There's thousands of board games that come out each year, and it's harder and harder to stand out from the pack. If this game had come out 5 years ago, we would be saying this is probably one of the best games of the year. But it comes out now, and it's very good. I enjoy it, but yet it doesn't quite stand away from the pack. But I would gladly play it with you. You come on and say, hey, you want to play Pioneers Days? Sure, great decisions, it's quick and easy, it's fun, I'm down. But I'm not going to be beating you over the head with it saying you have to play this. And that's just the world we live in. Excellent game. I highly recommend it. If you like these dice drafting and you like the Western games, this is a great Euro game for that, and that's Pioneer Days.
This video was sponsored by Miniature Market's Review Corner. The Review Corner features podcasts, video, and written game reviews by gamers for gamers. Miniature Market, the online gaming superstore. Thousands of board games, discounted prices. Check them out at miniaturemarket.com.